Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'm going to start it off in Lamentations 4, verse 17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we watched for a nation that could not save us. And that as for us is speaking of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who are the true children of Israel. And that nation you looked for that could not save you but gave you vain help are these Edomites, or so-called white people, especially in the United States of America, Babylon the Great. Because look at our history, with the birth of this nation, violence, rape, robbery, abuse, etc., etc. You Jakes march for equality and coming together and trying to get restitution. But with each passing generation, your situation here just gets worse and worse, because America was never meant to be a place of rest for us. It was a place for our punishment, for our disobedience from the Heavenly Father. So with this being the year of 2025, the hopeful year of the deliverance of the elect of the nation of Israel and the destruction of Esau, Edom, you Israelites now more than ever should be seeking your power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, because great judgment is coming upon Esau and America. And those that still want to look for that vain help are going to go down with the ship, which I'm going to get Micah chapter 2, verse 10. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest. Point blank, period. And this is talking about arising and departing from this place spiritually right now, not being attuned to the holidays, practices, or the ways of life of America or Esau, Edom. Of course, you got to get your daily bread and go to work, pay your taxes and, be cordial with these people out here. But as for being invested in this system, having a 5, 10, 15, 20-year plan, hey, that's a no-go. Because it is polluted, it shall destroy you even with a sore destruction, that vain help. And in this video, I'll be going into 2 bits of information showing that this place is not our rest, and what? It just destroys us more and more with each passing year. And the topic we'll be dealing with this American system that has never and will never help you Jakes is the wellness system, as we'll call it. And the first bit of information I'll be going to is on independent.co.uk. More so-called black babies, Israelite babies, are dying than so-called white or Edomite infants. Scientists are blaming the wellness care inequality. Researchers say 5 million black Americans could have been saved since the 1950s if their mortality rates were equal to those of Edomite Americans. Hey, we watched for that vain help for a nation that could not save us. And when you look at this aspect of the history of you Israelites with America, especially the Southern Kingdom, or, so-called black, so-called African Americans, you have always been experiments in this wellness center, in this wellness system. Look at the Tuskegee experiments, or look at more recently with 2019 to 2021 with the jump shot. Who was the main target for it? You so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And in 2025, we're seeing a whole host of issues coming from those that took the juice. Although the disparity in the number of overall deaths reported between black and white Americans has narrowed over the course of the last 75 years, researchers say the same does not hold true for infants. And even though that's the case, hey, that doesn't mean you're still not being abused as an adult in this system, which, we're going to get into with the next bit of information. Black infants are dying twice the rate of white infants, and it's largely thanks to wellness, care, inequality. This is like a red alarm. Harvard University Associated Professor Dr. Soroush Sanghafian explained, "Our findings are saying, look, we could have saved 5 million Israelite Americans if they had the same things as Edomite Americans have," he told the Harvard Gazette. The authors analyzed mortality data collected by the U.S. Census Bureau and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, calculating life expectancy, mortality rates, and years of potential life lost for both Edomite and Israelite Americans. Saghafian was an author of the research published in the journal Annals of Internal Medicine. Their analysis found that there was a 20.4% increase in life expectancy for Israelite Americans and a 13% rise for Edomite Americans. Although Israelite adults still have an 18% higher mortality rate. And, off of face value, you would think, 20% increase in life is higher than a 13%, increase in life. But hey, that doesn't count for shit if before that, Edomite Americans already had a higher, life expectancy than Israelite Americans. So theirs just rised even more. But as I said, Israelite adults still have an 18% higher mortality rate. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, for it is polluted and shall destroy you with the sword destruction. While the mortality rates for both black and white infants have improved, the disparity between races has worsened. For black infants in the 1950s, the mortality rate was 92% higher than white infants. Today, that percentage has risen to 115%. While Saghafian noted that the purpose of the study was not to examine the reason for their findings, he stated that the main reason for excess mortalities are medical. Our work raises the critical question of why, over 7 decades of post-World War II, we still haven't figured out a solution for this enormous problem, he said. And you won't, figure out the solution until you look at the elephant in the room, that these Edomites have a perpetual hatred towards the Israelites, and this whole system was built off of the oppression and deletion of Israelites. Which brings me to Ezekiel chapter 35. I'm going to start at verse 1, and the header reads, "Prophesy against Mount Seir." And Mount Seir was an ancient dwelling place for the Edomites. "Moreover, the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. And like Jerusalem is a people before it's a place, Mount Seir is a people before it's a place." So this is being addressed to the nation of you Edomites, or so-called white people. But now I'm going to jump down to verse 5. "Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred." And when we get that word perpetual in the Strongs, it's H5769, olam, which reads long, duration, antiquity, from the past, futurity, to the future, forever, everlasting, evermore, perpetual, old, ancient, continuous existence, indefinite or unending future, eternity. These Edomites have a perpetual, never-ending hatred towards you Israelites, all the way from antiquity, all the way to today. And that goes back to our forefather Jacob, supplanting the blessing and the birthright to the kingdom of heaven from their forefather Esau, which you can read about in Genesis chapter 25 and Genesis chapter 27. And immediately after Isaac blessed Esau, after he was supplanted from, the blessing, Esau got the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven, which he would get by his other blessing, the sword, which how did these Edomites gain their kingdom? Through rape, robbery, and murder, colonialism, all the way to these wars that they wage for resources today. After he had received that, finite blessing, because that wasn't going to be a permanent thing for him. And Esau is almost at the end of his blessing. He said, "The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob." And they've had that sentiment all the way until today. Hence why you see the disparities between care for Israelite and Edomite patients in the American Wellness Center, and a higher mortality rate for Israelites in it, and more abuse. Because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity, in the time that their iniquity had an end. And immediately after Jake got out of, slavery, or after the Civil War, which, Jake just went from plantation slavery to governmental corporate slavery, with the Emancipation Proclamation, which, emancipation means just a transfer of ownership. You had the Reconstruction era to the Jim Crow era. You had all those race riots in the early 1900s, which led to the destruction of Black Wall Street and Rosewood. You had drowned towns where thriving Israelite communities were flooded by Edomites. The Civil Rights era, the War on Drugs era, the prison industrial complex, all the way up until today, where, as we're reading about, Jake is still being abused in the wellness system. Hey, Esau continues to show that perpetual hatred towards you Israelites, and it will not end. Even when we are in the kingdom of heaven and there are slaves, even though they won't be able to do anything against us, they'll still be having those hateful thoughts in their head. Let's X out some of these. The American wellness care system has long been under scrutiny for its astronomical costs and hurdles to patient care. A new study released Wednesday from the West Health Institute has found that the inability to pay for wellness care in the U.S. has reached a new high. More than a third of Americans, or an estimated 91 million people, report that they could not access quality wellness care if they needed it, according to the latest West Health Gallup Wellness Care Affordability Index. Rates were higher among so-called Black and so-called Hispanic Americans, Israelites, Southern and Northern Kingdom, with 46% of Black Americans reporting that they would be unable to afford quality health care. So, to you assholes out there, you might say, well, all Americans are going through it. It's just, so-called Blacks and Hispanics, they don't work as hard. They're lazy. They got to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. If you work hard enough in America, anybody can make it. Well, evidence number 2. This is a clip from Babies After 35's Instagram page. A personal experience with obstetrical violence against so-called Black pregnant patient. And, this is a Edomite woman who's in the wellness care system, giving you firsthand accounts of the abuses she's witnessed against Israelite Americans in the wellness care system. So, put this in your pipe and smoke it. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
I'm going to share a story that I've thought about sharing a gazillion times since I've been on social media. I think today's the day. So I was in medical school from 1996 to 2000. When I was on my third year OB rotation, back then, all the patients delivered in the OR. Vaginal delivery, C-sections, they all delivered in the OR. And I remember going back for a delivery, black patient. This was her fourth or fifth delivery. Delivered seamlessly, not an issue. And I remember it was me, the faculty, and a resident. Don't remember what year the resident was, doesn't really matter. But after the patient delivered, the faculty looked at the resident and said, "Have you repaired a 4th degree laceration yet?" And the resident said no. So, hold on. So, the faculty got a pair of scissors. Okay, the faculty got a pair of scissors, and he put one blade in the vagina and one blade in the rectum, and he cut off.
So this Israelite woman had a perfectly healthy, pregnancy, birth. And then this Edomite devil doctor, just to give practice for what they called a resident patient, did this procedure on her. Hey, that perpetual hatred being shown in real time towards you Israelites. Hey, looking for that vain help from a nation that could not save you. Only thing you Israelites have ever been in Esau's system is a means for exploitation and profit. This is Wisdom of Solomon in the Apocrypha, chapter 15, verse 12. And, I want to give a shout out to the brother Mawatazakba Bangad, who I got that clip from one of his videos he did. But they counted our life a pastime. And a pastime is what? Something you do for fun in your free time, like playing baseball or eating apple pie. Then the lives of you Israelites are a pastime for these Edomites in America to abuse, make fun of, and have fun with. Just look at all these instances where Edomites would, blame Jake falsely for doing something so they could be justified in deleting them. One thing I'll always remember is back, I think even as early as the 60s at fairs and carnivals, they had a game called Hit the Trigger, Dunk the Nigger, where a Jake would be sitting on top of a vat filled with water, and you'd hit the trigger with the baseball bat and dunk the nigger. And they had another game called Hit the Nigger Baby, where they put an Israelite child's face through a target and you throw baseballs at it trying to hit the baby. You devils got a lot to pay for, and best believe that great recompense is coming quickly. But they counted our life a pastime and our time here a market for gain. And using a perfectly healthy Israelite woman to show a medical procedure to a resident patient, a resident, person or whatever they were called, is an example of a market for gain. And again, 2019 to 2021 was a big market for gain, getting these companies billions of dollars to convince many of you Israelites to take that juice. For they say we must be getting every way, though it be by evil means. And using Israelites for experimentation, exploitation, abuse, you name it.
4th degree in a patient who had already delivered. Now, I was a medical student. I didn't know if that was what was done and that's how they trained residents, I don't even think it even computed with me what was happening and how wrong it was, obviously, until I got more training and became a resident myself and realized what had actually happened. There's a lot of things that happened back then that we were made a party to because of the practices and obstetric abuses that were commonplace, and we couldn't say anything.
And as we get closer to the end of Esau's rulership, these Edomites are feeling that guilt and that spiritual heat coming on them. So, they're scrambling, trying to take, that heat off them and apologize. But, the apologies are too late. This is Psalms 64:8. So shall they make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away. And this is an example of Esau making his own tongue to fall upon himself, with this Edomite woman exposing the abuses she's seen in the wellness care system, especially towards you Israelites. And what is it leading to? Shame being put on the history and just the system in general of you Edomites, because especially with critical race theory, which these Edomites are trying to get rid of, which, as the Elder Malcolm of Chicago says, it should be called critical race historical fact. That history you Edomites used to be so proud of, the founding of America, the founding fathers, all that shit. When you look at it, what was America really built off of? The blood, sweat, and tears, and the exploitation in the backs of these Israelites, and all the horrors you've committed towards them, which, we're seeing an example of with that clip on Instagram. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 16. Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. Or what? Your secrets being uncovered. The cup of Yahweh's right hand shall be turned unto thee. And that cup is ultimately going into slavery that you Edomites are going to drink in the first 1,000 years of the kingdom of heaven. And shameful spewing shall be on thy glory. And that Edomite woman is putting shameful spewing on the glory of you Edomites and your wellness care system, showing the systematic abuses shown towards the Israelites. And then, as we read in that first article, Israelite babies and, Israelite adults have a higher mortality rate than Edomites. This is James. Where was I at? This is Job chapter 20, verses 10 to 11. His children shall seek to please the poor, and his hands shall restore their goods. And as we continue in that clip, that Edomite woman is going to say, she makes an effort to treat her Israelite patients, a different, somewhat better way than her Edomite patients. She's got a guilty conscience, so she's trying to seek to please the poor. And, his hands shall restore their goods. You got Edomites out here that donate money to so-called Black and Hispanic and Native American funds to try to help them out. And you got a lot of Edomites protesting Trump's ICE deportations. Why? Because that shameful spewing is upon their glory, and they feel condemned in their spirits, at least some of them, because for the majority of these Edomites, they still have that proud, that was in the past spirit, get over it. Well, hey, keep that same energy when you're in hardcore bondage and slavery in the kingdom of heaven. His bones are full of the sin of his youth, which shall lie down with him in the dust. Hey, to the very core, these Edomites are still that wicked, with that perpetual hatred of their forefathers from the past all the way up until today. And another thing, reincarnation is biblical. So you Edomites, those Edomites in the past that committed those horrific, racist acts, hey, they're back here today waiting to receive that judgment.
We couldn't say anything. And although I will never know what it's like to be a Black pregnant individual in this country.
Well, you're gonna know what slavery is like, so you can have so you'll have some experience with that.
I can educate myself and understand and teach and learn some more and bring awareness and do better for.
And he shall seek to please the poor.
As a physician and as someone who's teaching future physicians. So, in many ways, I do treat my Black patients differently because of what I know and I have learned. I've not experienced, but what I know and what I have learned has happened to them in healthcare since Joe Marion Sims. I make an active effort to make any situation I'm in a safe place for my Black patients because I care and I try to learn from them. And they actually teach me. But I can't be taught if I don't ask. So I ask. The fact that remains that the reason why Black patients in this country have the highest rates of maternal morbidity and mortality are largely due to racism, both within the individual providers and with the systems.
Boom. That perpetual hatred. And what? For our vain help, we looked for a nation that could not save us.
It's not because
they shall make their own tongues to fall upon themselves.
Any biological differences in their bodies or their anatomy or their physiology. It's due to the fact that when they hit the door, they're not set up to receive equal and equitable health care because of the tone of their skin. And if you don't believe that, just hear this one little fact. Black pregnant patients with a college education still have a 5-fold increased risk of maternal morbidity and mortality over their white counterparts.
Remember what we read in that first article about infant mortalities with Israelites compared to Edomites all the way up until 2025.
So if you are an obstetrical care provider or you're becoming one, we just had match week, make sure if you need it, educate yourself. Learn, talk to your patients, read, follow accounts that are educating on this topic if you're on social media. There are plenty of ways that we can arm ourselves to better take care of our Black patients. And with everything that's going on politically in this country, the risk to them is even greater.
That's it with that clip. But hey, too little, too late. Because there is a great recompense coming, and Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai will avenge his people upon you Edomites. This is James chapter 2, verse 13. For he shall have judgment without mercy that has shewed no mercy, and mercy rejoiceth against judgment. So you Edomites that ruled without mercy shall receive no mercy from Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Revelation 13, verses 9 to 10. He that hath an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. The transatlantic slave trade. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. The Reconstruction era, prison industrial complex, the wellness care system, which we just read about, etc., etc. That sword, which has been over the heads of the Israelites, is about to be over the heads of you Edomites. And as it says in Revelation chapter 18, do unto them double as they have done unto you. all the horrific stuff that was done unto Israelites, in their captivity, shall be done double unto you Edomites. And your captivity is going to make ours look like a day on Sesame Street. But, we're not going to be doing any wicked stuff like taking a man's wife from him while he's still alive and laying with her. If an Israelite wants to do that, they're just going to delete you, raping a man's wife and daughter in front of him, buck breaking. None of that stuff's going to happen. We're going to do it by the law. But hey, again, do double unto them as they have done unto you. And best believe Judah, or the so-called black, so-called African American, is definitely going to get their get back against you Edomites. I'm going to close it out in Ezekiel chapter 25, verses 12 to 14. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, because that Edom hath dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and hath greatly offended, and revenged himself upon them. And Judah was the topic of that article we read with infant mortalities, and with that Instagram clip with that Edomite nurse talking about the abuses she's seen towards so-called black Americans. Therefore, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. During World War III, which we are on the precipice of, everywhere you Edomites dwell are going to get hit by nuclear missiles, and every Edomite in America is going to be wiped off the face of the earth with America. And then the remaining Edomites in these other countries are going to be gathered up, beginning with your elites, and begin serving that first 1,000 years of hardcore bondage and slavery, building up the kingdom of heaven. And then after that first 1,000 years, you're going to get that Obadiah 1 verse 18 treatment, where your whole nation is going to be completely cut off from the face of the earth. Verse 14, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people, Israel. So not just Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, the southern kingdom, but the northern kingdom as well, so-called Latinos and Native Americans. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger. He that judgeth without mercy shall receive no mercy. Do double unto them. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury. And they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord Yahweh. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babol, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.